This is the ReaderHouse Author Roundtable. I'm your host, Alice Stockton Rossini. Thanks for coming back. We're going to start off with Joe Biondi, a guy who knows what he writes. In fact, he was in the middle of a very important sales meeting when I called, and he stopped to talk to me about his book. That's how important it is for him to get this information to you. Sales Strategies for the Rookie to the Seasoned Pro is the name of his book. Now, Joe, you're a leader in the global heating and air conditioning business, right? And it's your job to help your teams drive sales and opportunities. So what I'm trying to say is you've been at this a while.
Over 30 years, yeah.
So clearly you saw a need to write Sales Strategies for the Rookie to Seasoned Pro.
I did, yes.
What made you say, I gotta address this?
Yeah, no, great question. So earlier on in my career, many times I was assigned a junior sales associate or a college intern to ride alongside me to talk about opportunities with customers, to build relationships and to really drive the business. And many of those that made an impact on me in other areas would say, Joe, the time has been invaluable. I can't thank you enough. You should write a book. And I have to say, after probably the third or fourth one told me that, I said, you know what, maybe I should. So little by little, I just started to write down ideas. From there, ideas became chapters, and then chapters became pages. And kind of here we are many years later, proud of it to finally be at this point.
What kinds of things did you notice salespeople were doing that needed to be addressed?
Another good question. Not following up, not building relationships. Probably the most critical thing, not being true to their word. And that's what I write in the book. You have to do what you say you're going to do, but not just do it, really do it. And what I mean by that is really go the extra mile. You have to set yourself apart from the competition.
So give me an example of what you're talking about.
For example, let's say a customer says, I need a proposal by Friday. Well, Friday becomes next Wednesday, and the sales person says, I'm sorry, I was busy. I had this or I had that going on. I couldn't get to it. What that says to the customer is that I didn't have time for you. Mm-hmm. What that also says to the customer is I really don't care about your business. So that is a great way to not have a customer or have that business. So it's crucial that you not only comply with the deadline, but you exceed it. Have your proposal be precise. Have the opportunity be very clear to the customer, because if it is, most likely it's going to be something they purchase more so than someone else's.
Under promise, over deliver.
Always. That is a key. And another rule I've always lived by and taught junior sales folks, and even some seniors as well, that maybe have kind of lost sight of the ball, to reference baseball, singles and doubles. Because singles and doubles will build you a pipeline in a career that will sustain 20, 30 years. You want to be a home run hitter and overcharge somebody for something they didn't need? Go ahead and do it. You'll never hit that home run again, because the customer will not be there.
You talk about building relationships. Do you think that's difficult for people to do?
If you're in a sales role, it should not be. It should be the thing that drives you the most.
Yeah, but the thing is, that seems to me to be one of the issues, is that it's hard to build these interpersonal relationships, mainly because they're just not being themselves. And just, it's just like building any other relationship. All you have to be is yourself. And I think sometimes people have a difficulty in sales just being who they are.
Well, at the start of the book, and you're spot on. In the start of the book, I say, why would you do this? Is sales truly something you want to do? Because to build those relationships takes time. And if you don't have the intestinal fortitude to keep moving forward, it's not the role for you. Building relationships, and I mentioned this many times in the book, is without a doubt the most important thing you can do.
What is your advice?
First of all, when you're meeting with a customer, be attentive. Be someone that wants to go ahead and learn about their company. You can't sell something to someone, whether it's a new car, or anything in between, all the way up to pharmaceuticals and any other industry you want to think of. You can't sell anything to anyone if you don't know what they do. So ask questions, talk to them, find where their pain is, what's driving them to call you. And then from there, you have to come up with a customized solution that differentiates you from the other person, the other salesperson trying to win their business. Build the relationship, understand what they do for a living, and then from there, you have to customize your solution to fit the need.
Okay. But do you also find for the rookie, if they're stuck, they're trying to make inroads with a customer, that they're afraid to ask a superior for guidance because they don't want to feel like, they're stupid or they should know?
Well, salespeople certainly, one thing they are not usually shy of is an ego. So yes, to ask for help can be difficult. But
exactly.
But I mentioned that in the book. I say surround yourself with like-minded people. Find the top performers in your company, whether it's in cars or any industry in between that you're selling, and ask them what's brought them success. Ask them how they go about building relationships, and really ask them what has sustained their career. Because if you find out what works for them, you can customize it to what will work for you if you're a rookie. And one thing salespeople love to do is go for lunch. So buy them lunch. It will be time well spent. It'll be money well invested so you can learn your craft as a rookie.
Take me through the chapters of your book.
Of course, I start out with the roles within a salesperson's career. So I talk about the rookie person, the intermediate salesperson, and then from there I talk about more of the sales executives and professionals. So I pretty much go through every sect of what sales is. From there, I talk about building relationships, like you mentioned earlier, which is the most important thing you can do. Then even more, just as important, I talk about time and time management. One thing a customer will always do is waste your time. So that salesperson has to really be strategic and say, do I have an opportunity here? Or is my time better suited elsewhere? I put a lot of emphasis on that because that is something that everyone doesn't have enough of, time. Then from there, I talk about pricing potential opportunities. I talk about following up. I even talk about some scenarios on how things can unfold in any given market that you sell in. So from there, it's what you do with your time, how to uncover opportunities, but most importantly, how to build and sustain those relationships.
Now, is this required reading for every salesperson that you bring on?
Well, certainly people that report to me, it will be, but once it goes public, it certainly can be required reading for any salesperson, whether it's the rookie, like the title says, or that seasoned pro. The rookie, because they just don't know what they don't know. So this will give them a really good it'll give them a really nice insight into what sales is all about. For the professional, it'll certainly reaffirm things they may knew, but it will certainly jog their memories of possibly things they've forgotten.
All right. So, I mean, you've been around. You know there's a million sales books out there. How to be a good salesperson, right? What sets your book apart?
Great question. I talk about roles in sales, like I mentioned. I also talk about building opportunities. I talk about building a pipeline and a plan to make your plan, meaning your annual quota. But I think the biggest thing is how to be true to yourself, how to look at yourself in the mirror every day and to be good at what you do and to have the strength mentally and sometimes physically to get through the day-to-day. But the relationship building aspect and the strategy around building and sustaining those is key. I find that my book is really unique in that regard because a lot of times a sales book talks about the X's and O's of sales, how to buy, how to sell, how to buy things low to sell high. It's not about that. It's about being strong, being true to your word, and really how to build those relationships from a business perspective, even to a personal perspective, and really being a good, solid working individual in a sales role. For me, that's what's really helped build my success, is being true to my word, building relationships, and doing a good job every day.
You also have a great product, Joe.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that.
Well, I mean, you've got something everybody needs, HVAC, right? I
Correct.
mean, everybody needs it,
Right.
you know?
Yeah, and the world I'm in of HVAC, certainly for the HVAC professionals out there, it will absolutely be directly relative to what they do every day. But it's not just about an industry-specific book or an industry-specific perspective. It's really for any type of salesperson, because let's face it, an opportunity is an opportunity, whether it's a customer walking in your door or a customer looking to purchase a television set.
Right.
It's qualifying the opportunity and the customer, building that relationship, whether it be for today or long term, and driving the sale, getting the yes.
All right, Joe Biondi, great advice. Sales strategies for the rookie to the seasoned pro. Thank you.
You got it. And thank you for your time, Alice.
Marty Gootel has a dream job. He works on a trolley at the Americana in Glendale, California, a property owned and built by LA businessman Rick Caruso. And it partially inspired his book, The Adventures of Peter and Me, Peter's Traveling Trolley Tours. Tell me a little bit about the Americana.
It's like a shopping center that looks a little bit like Main Street USA in Disneyland, where meaning that all the shops are like very all stylized different, and the trolley basically give the memory of the 1920s red car, and it was designed by Mr. George McGinnis. So I work, it's all 100% electric, which is good for the environment. So I work on it by, giving guests tours, letting them know what's happening, on the property, and entertaining them.
Is that what inspired The Adventures of Peter and Me?
Well, it's a little bit of both, actually. So on and off, I used to, write, different little stories that would come through my head as I was growing up. And then at one point when I came home from college, I had two brainstorms to write, stories. One that I was barely starting on, which would have been a sci-fi, gumshoe type of genre. And then that kind of came into a little bit of a roadblock. And then there was another one I was really inspired, one that would kind of set in a fantasy world where a living person went to like this place where fantasy was like real life. Unfortunately, in that case, I stopped doing the story. And then at one point when I was on the trolley, fast forwarding to about like 2018, the trolley's going around. There is a statue on the property. It was created by American sculptor Donald DeLue. And it's called The Spirit of American Youth Rising Out of the Waves. And it's plated in 23 karat gold plating. Well, most people think it's always going to be an even number, like 24. So I used to make a joke saying that there was a nearsighted bunny who mistook the carat for an actual carat, and he stole a carat off of the statue. That's why it's 23, and we're still looking for that bunny. And a few people said, oh, you know what? You should write a children's book about it. So I actually started to pen the idea for it. So now when the world came to a crashing halt in 2020 because of COVID, my good friend and brother, James, he would visit us to his own peril of health. And he always loved hearing my stories. And he said, well, why don't you, do a blog or something? So I did a blog, and then I did a blog, and I was doing a podcast. Both of them right now are like a suspended hiatus because my life kind of went back to normal. But he said, hey, why don't you take your blog and turn it into a book? So I started turning it into a book. And he says, Marty, why don't you write a children's book? Because I know you have it in you. Write a children's book about something that, you like. And that is basically how the ball started rolling into the creation for The Adventures of Peter and Me, Peter's Traveling Trolley Tours.
You just followed that creative line, that creative trolley.
Uh-huh.
Tell me about the book.
When I first made the original draft, the story was set with myself as a conductor on a trolley, and it did actually reflect to a point my real life. I was a conductor on a trolley, and the thing is, though, is that I would, I entertain the guests, but in the end, when I'd bring the trolley back into its, garage, I would be lonely because I didn't have a friend. And one day, a gentleman comes on the trolley who eventually was going to be James, and he started laughing and he enjoyed it. And it was like he realized he got a connection with someone, and he disappears. And the conductor gets a little bit on the sad side that he had connected really with somebody who kept always coming on the trolley to hear him perform. And then in the end, it's a surprise that that person, the reason they weren't there anymore was because they had gone to another location to train because they hired on to be a member of the trolley staff, and they wound up working the trolley together. Unfortunately, I got a lot of creative criticism. And when I say unfortunately, it's because the thing is, you have to have tough skin, as an author to accept creative criticism, and
Agreed.
the thing is, a lot of people, they like the idea of a conductor or trolley in this beautiful park area, but they didn't kind of like some of the sad elements. They said it was a little bit maybe too sad, for a children's book. And my brother James agreed, and he said, well, why don't you make the conductor a child? And I took that criticism and the criticism of everyone else, and I retooled it. So the book did a complete 360. So instead of it being two adults on the trolley, it went to being two children. One child longing to find a friend, and another one who actually runs this incredible trolley. And that's how the story goes. So picture this. A young boy sitting on a bench in this beautiful park setting in the town of Sunnyvale. He's not your average child, he's a little bit on the heavy side, and he's barely just been to this town just not long, and he's very shy. So it's very hard for him to, get the courage to go make friends. So here he's sitting amongst these beautiful flowers, and we have birds singing in the fountain, and we have bunnies playing in the meadows, but all he does is he just sits there and watches the world go by until one day, going to his bench, he sees a sign that says, looking for an adventure? Well, venture is just a ring of the bell away on Peter's traveling trolley tours. And you would think, okay, he's going to ring the bell, but no, he's thinking on and off. He's just not sure what to do. Should he ring the bell? Should he not? He wants to have a friend, and maybe this Peter might be his friend. So one day, by happenstance, he's going to decide he's going to ring the bell, and then he's like, no. And you know how you have those moments where you're like, I'm going to, and then you step away. Well, incredibly, a bug lands on his glasses, and when he jumps back in surprise, his hand reaches out and he rings the bell. And in ringing the bell, suddenly up appears Peter, a young boy, just about roughly, it looks like the same age as him, wearing an oversized trolley uniform with a big pocket watch. I mean, the scene would be outright comical, but Peter just acts as if this is normal to him. And Marty's like, huh. And Peter eventually takes him on this trolley. See, the park, it doesn't have a trolley. So when Peter says, come on, the trolley's coming through, and he takes off through this hedge, and Marty, his character goes right behind him, he suddenly finds there is a track. There is a trolley, but it's not your normal type of trolley. It's a trolley that when they go up there, the control panel, I don't know if you're familiar with, most places, there's like, a throttle, there's buttons and all of that. But in this case, Peter's trolley actually has a myriad of colored lighted buttons. And he tells them, just go pick one. And they'll go on and, they'll go wherever the button is. So there's like a moon with a blue star shooting by it. There's a gray elephant, an orange pumpkin. There's one that has like little tents with a roller coaster in the background. A waterfall coming down that almost looks like the water is actually moving. And even a sailboat. And he says, like, the best part, what Peter says is, just close your eyes and just let your hand drop. And Marty does it. He puts his hand on the button, and suddenly the trolley takes off on its own to a sailing adventure where they get on a little sailboat and they go through this adventure on the high seas where they deal with a seagull, they deal with a very rude fish, they even come across pirates and a mermaid. And the whole thing is they're having this adventure, but as they're having this adventure, you're learning about what it is to be a friend. And that's the core message of the book.
This is part of a series, isn't it?
Yes, it's designed to be part of a series because Peter's trolley is named Penelope. And this is something I added at the end of the book, is to let people, as an added thing to the book was, I put a message from Penelope to the reader saying, just because you think Peter and Marty was alone, that doesn't mean they never really was alone. So as an added bonus, there's a little search that you could do going back through the book again and find where Penelope, which is Peter's traveling trolley, is there making sure they are safe. And it definitely tells you point blank, there is going to be a continuation because of certain events that happen that Peter leaves Marty a gift. And that's how Peter and Marty will reunite again for another story, which I've already written. Actually, I have written the continuation of it, and each story is going to have, just like this story, a core message. What is it to be a friend? And then the core branches off of it is, are they trustworthy?
Right. Yeah.
Do they care for you? And that is laced throughout the story through the interactions they have with the characters. And then it's brought up in the very end when all the core messages are brought to the single core by the discovery of Marty himself when he discovers it. And that's kind of like what I want to do. I want to entertain, but give a knowledgeable message that I would hope children of all ages will take with them and apply to their own lives without basically them realizing that I'm teaching them a lesson.
Right. Correct. Yeah. This is very sweet. This is very colorful. I can see kids just loving this. How do you get to those kids?
Well, many of them are on the trolley because a few parents actually have, I talked to them and then I said, I wrote a children's book, and they're like, really? And then when they look up and they see the cover of the book, they're like, oh, wow. And then they get it. And a sister property to where we work is very interested. And I'm in the process of working on, doing a book study with them. So I'm doing my best to get myself out there. I am also in the process of trying to get myself out to some of the book fairs. I'm trying to save up money right now to be part of the Los Angeles Festival of Books. And that would be a very big stage for my book to appear on.
All right, so you're doing all the right stuff.
I really have a lot of faith in my book that it is going to take off. I really believe that it could, not only be a story, but I could almost eventually see it as maybe a movie or even a television show.
Can you see building this little trolley thing where the buttons you described were there and the kids could push the buttons?
This is something that would definitely get Disney's attention, or another person who is extremely into children and reading would be Dolly Parton. This could also be something that she could install probably at her Dolly World.
There you go.
She's also very much part of this group called the Imagination Library.
Do it.
Oh, I'll definitely look into it. Thank you.
Okay. Marty Gootel, The Adventures of Peter and Me, Peter's Traveling Trolley Tours. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much. Hopefully we'll talk again sometime soon.
Dr. Joni Nicole McAllister has spent the last 40 years in the ministry and training associate ministers. In that time, she saw a need that she addresses in her book, Padilla, the Associate Minister's Training Manual.
I did. I did see a need for this. This was a passion that I didn't even know I had. What happened was I was asked by my former pastor back in 2010, somewhere around that, to train his associate ministers. And from that came my passion. I had no idea that was my passion. Training associate ministers to become effective in the ministry that God has called them to do.
So the most important thing you have to have is a calling.
Oh, yes. Without the call, you can't do anything. This has to be a divine call, not by man, not by the pastor, but by God. So I called it a divine calling. That was my calling.
What are the most important qualities you need to be a successful associate minister?
First of all, the calling. How do you know you're called to this? Because so many people are teaching and preaching, and that's not their calling. So many people do it for various reasons, for money, for fame, because they weren't successful at one point in their life. So once you know that this is your calling, then you have to be trained. You can't just step into a ministry and without being trained. And that's where a lot of leaders have failed. That's why churches have fallen, because they weren't trained for this. So
what is it that I have to do? What's the most common mistakes?
first of all, you have to have a love for God's people. If you don't love them, you can't serve. Serving is the most important thing of being an associate minister. And then you have to endure a lot, because you have to give up a lot. You have to give up yourself. And a lot of leaders don't want to give up themselves. A lot of associate ministers are not competent. Another thing, you have to be secure in yourself. A lot of leaders are insecure. They struggle with jealousy. And also a lot of them are not loyal. You have to be loyal. You know, I've seen so many disloyal leaders, disloyal to God, disloyal to their pastor. And then you have to show character. Another thing that I share in my book is integrity. And integrity to me is living every day the way you would live if no one was watching you. Okay. And then you have to have a teachable spirit, being organized. That's very important. I use for an example. If my house is unorganized, or if my car is unorganized, chances are my life is unorganized. I don't pay my bills on time. All of that integrity, it shows that you have character. And there is a verse in the Bible that talks about integrity, especially in Proverbs 10:9. It says, whoever walks in integrity walks in security. Some people, you can't tell them anything because they think they know it all. So that's a life that's out of order to me. And another thing that I talk about in my book is the idea that flawed people so many people are flawed, but they think that because they're flawed that God cannot use them. That's not true. Because there was many characters in the Bible who are flawed, like David. He was flawed. He sinned with Bathsheba, had a baby, had her husband killed. But he was flawed, but yet God was able to turn his life around. Being on time, being disciplined. Can your pastor trust you? And how do you see yourself? How do you see yourself? Because some people don't see themselves as giants or who God has, ordained them to be. They see themselves as small, insignificant. Okay, so these are things that I teach in my book, and I also teach the dangers of skipping the training process. It's very dangerous to skip the process because some people, it's just like going to school. You go to kindergarten, you go to the first grade, okay? And you didn't learn first grade lesson, but you want to go to the fifth grade. So skipping the process, you're going to miss a lot of important things that you need to learn. And another thing that I wrote about in my book is the role of the second fiddle, being second in command. A lot of people want to be number one, but they don't know how to be number two, how to serve their leader.
Well, that's ego, right?
It is ego.
I'm an associate minister. I think I could run the church better. I want to be the minister, but I don't have the degree. And I mean, being in a position like you're a trainer, how do you deal with somebody like that who's like, I think I should be in charge? How do you handle that? Is that in your book? Is that part of your book?
Of course it is. Oh, I meet so many egocentric people. They think that, they know more than me, and they haven't gone through any of the testing and trials and the process that I've gone through, but yet they want to teach me. And so ego, I talked about in my book, is really edging God out of the way. It's an antonym, ego, edging God out of the way. I want to do it my way. And so how do I deal with it? Well, first of all, I speak about it. I talk about it. I bring it to them. I said, first of all, you got to get your ego out of the way. God can't use you when you think that you know it all. I believe we talked about Einstein. He's supposed to be the most smartest guy in the world, and even he said, there are things that I need to learn. There's more I need to learn. So I teach people, and I've dealt with them in my class as well, especially the ones who haven't had a lot of training. So I have to remind them that you have to stay humble. So I read scriptures to them like, stay humble under the mighty hand of God. God loves humility. One of the chapters in my book, I talk about stay humble or be humble or you will stumble. And people do stumble when they're not humble. They fall. And pride comes before a fall. So these are the things that I talk about in my book. So I address the issue. If you're proud, leave your ego at the door. Don't come in. Or I tell them that this is a class that you won't be able to handle because this one of the lessons we talk about in here is the sin of pride. I talk to them about how Lucifer, who was an angel in heaven, his pride caused him to fall. He took 1/3 of the angels with him and he was kicked out of heaven because of pride. And I tell the people that pride will not get you into heaven. If Satan got kicked out of heaven, don't think that God is going to allow pride to get back in heaven. So these are the things that we have to deal with while we're down here. Pride. Pride comes before a fall. Now, pride can't, sometimes pride is not a bad thing. It's okay to be proud, in your accomplishments. But when you think that you're better than other people, that's where pride comes in. And that's where pride winds up being sin in the eyes of God. So we can't do anything. This is what I teach. We can't do anything without God. We need him. So we have to stay humble before him. And in due time, in God's time, he will raise us up.
Now, do you teach a class?
I do.
And is this your manual for your class?
Well, actually, this whole book is something that I've taught for the last 9 years. These are my lessons. These are lessons that I taught in the school that I founded, which is called Padilla School of Training. And now it's called Padilla University.
That's wonderful. That should be required for anybody who wants to be an associate minister.
Absolutely. And I've trained about 50 to 60 persons so far.
Who do you see buying this book?
Who do I see buying this book? I see associate ministers, aspiring ministers, pastors, and congregations, right? Because this book will, once the leaders or aspiring leaders or teachers or deacons, doesn't matter who it is, it's for anybody who has desire to know more about God and about leadership.
How do you reach them?
Okay, so I reach them through social media. I know a lot of people. I know a lot of people up in New York, especially where I live down here in North Carolina. I go to many conferences. I go to 2 conferences a year where hundreds of people gather. I plan on having a book signing ceremony. I put my book out also already on Facebook and word of mouth.
Well, you're doing everything you should be doing. Did you do a lot of writing before this?
I did. As a matter of fact, I have 2 more books out. I'm actually working on another book. So this is what I'm going to be doing for the rest of my life, doing a lot of writing. So yes, I do have a lot of lessons. I did a lot of teaching. I was a professor for 7 years. I was a teacher. I did Sunday school. I did a lot of extensive people. Yeah, I at graduating classes, Bible school. I did a lot of teaching. So I have a lot of work. Yes.
And you said this book is doing well already?
Yes, because I purchased 100 copies so far, and I'm down to like 20 copies left. I'm selling them individually. Yes.
Good for you. Dr. Joni Nicole McAllister, Padilla, the Associate Minister's Training Manual. Thank you.
Oh, thank you.
Ronald E. Crutchfield was brought up in the woods of Alabama, and he was driving a truck by the time he was 15. It wasn't legal, but he says it was his granddaddy's truck, and he said he could drive it. Quite a few stories have come to Ronald while driving over the years, and he finally wrote one down. It is entitled The Christmas Stallion. How long you been driving, Ronald?
40 years, 4 million miles.
Wow.
Got that on for size.
That's a lot of time to think.
Yes, ma'am. That's a lot of time to do anything.
So you were just riding along and you thought about the Christmas Stallion.
I was going on through Nashville, and the lights were so pretty up there at times, and it sort of stuck with me. About 8 years ago, my wife passed away 5 years ago.
Okay.
And she managed to read the book and all, help me with it for about 3 years. I just sort of put up with the situation, and when I finally wrote it, she read it one time, and she said, "Well, you can try, but I don't know." And we tried it. It worked. That started it in Nashville about 10 years ago, and then you had to sort of back up and say, "Well, what I do next?" I drove a truck next, but it all come about a little bit at a time.
Tell me about the Christmas Stallion.
I was riding along there one night, and I saw a horse out in the field under a light for the houses, and it sort of struck me. That's an odd looking situation. Black with top on his head, and so I started putting that into the book I already wrote, and that's the way it came about. I saw that horse out there in that field, and he's standing under one of them lights that farmers put up to keep when they go out to feed the animals and all, they'll have a light. And there he was.
I'm reading your synopsis, and it says, we might not always know the answers, but the power of believing in Christmas can carry you through life.
Right. You got to have some belief. Somewhere along the line, everybody says, well, it's this, it's that. You got to have some belief and step away from that, what would you call it? Hard people say, no, there's no Santa Claus. Well, maybe they're not, but the belief keeps children going, and that's a lot about my story. I got kids all over the field, grandkids, kids, great grandkids.
So when you saw this horse, it just inspired you.
Well, that was part of it. Yeah, I already had some of it in there. And I sat down, when I got over at the truck stop, I sat down and I had some time that night until I just finally put it all together with that horse.
How did it feel when you got the book?
I liked it, man. Here was my name on a book that may live forever. May not, but it may live forever.
Did your kids read it?
Oh, everybody around here read it. I had to go get some copies of it, and I ordered about 20 copies. And I was, around close to reading. Everybody around here read it, and all of a sudden, everybody got to like it.
Yeah. So have you gotten any more inspiration since then? You're still driving, right?
No, man, I'm crippled up now. I got hurt, a few years back. And I'm going to the hospital today to see what they can do about my back. It's all messed up, but riding is going to be my, I'll step down from the truck to the riding. That's the way I'm going to have to do it.
So you're going to keep riding?
Yes, ma'am. I got one on my mind. I'm going to have to wait about 6 or 7 months to see how this one does first. And I got another one already. Somebody said, well, you got it wrote down? Yes, ma'am. In this head right here. It's in my head. And all I got to do is put it on paper.
It's in your head. What's in your head?
A story about the horse having to go get this young soldier. And they actually have a battle with the Arabs that, they don't believe anyway. So I use them as a backcast. And it just come to me on that one. And I just kept adding to it. And then you get the horse. He's got to battle these jets down, and standing up there in the slate, he battle, and it turned out to be comical. And it didn't look like it for a while, but then all of a sudden, Simon had the ace up his sleeve, as the old saying goes, and he flipped them out, and down they went. So they landed, and listen to me, I'm going to tell everybody the whole story, but there is a young boy. His mama was black and his daddy was white. And he has played into, I had to work on that. I didn't play in just right. And he's probably one of the main characters, the way I got it wrote in.
Okay.
But he's, him and the soldier have a bond, older guy and this young boy.
Mm-hmm.
But the first of the story of the book, the times where the black and white were not good for marriage, and the soldier was wanting to marry the black gal. Her daddy pulled her away. He goes back to service in the army, and they get killed in a wreck. And he gets a letter. Then he just it looks like he's giving up, but he don't.
Okay.
But all the way through that little boy, you can't tell. You look in his face and everything. And the last thing, when his grandma got him finally back home, after they were battling and everything, and she sent the horse after him. And so Simon brought him and the boy back. And when I get there, she's saying, "Well, I'm going to have to ride the stallion home. That means the stallion's time is up. Another one will take his place. And whoever wants to can ride him into heaven." So that was part of it. And the boy says, "I sure hate to see you go, Granny." And she said, "Why?" "There won't be nobody but me and Edward now." She said, "You gonna have to take care of Edward?" She says, "You sure you gonna take care of Edward?" He said, "Yes, ma'am. I'm gonna take care of it like he was mine." And she smiled and said, "You better read this. The child was his." The girl had a child before she got killed in a wreck. And I've told you, I hope nobody else is listening.
So this is your next book.
That's my next book.
All right. Well, now that you've told it to me, you have to write it down.
I'm going to write it down.
All right,
but I'm worried about 6 books.
All right. But this book is The Christmas Stallion by Ronald E. Crutchfield. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Janette A. Smith was a K-12 teacher in the Detroit public school system, and years ago she wrote children's books, but it was the pandemic and the effect on school children that inspired her book, COVID-19 in May.
It's about a little girl who really does not like the mere fact school is closed down and they have to do virtual learning, and she has to work with her parents. She misses her teachers. She misses her classmates. And she does not like the virtual learning that the COVID has forced upon them.
Okay. Did you know kids who were upset about virtual learning during COVID?
Yes, talking to teachers that have worked with me.
Yeah.
And I retired in 2008 after 32 years of service.
What were teachers telling you?
That they were having problems with children sitting down at the table or wherever they were supposed to be sitting to learn, that they would be getting up and leaving from the table, and they was not listening very well to what the teachers were saying, and that the parents had not, sometimes they would have the parents walking through the rooms, and sometimes they would not be, maybe with their robe on, little kids seeing the parents with robes on. It's like to them that they are not really dressed for company to see them.
Right.
And they had a lot of problems with the children getting their work done. Some of them were turning off their cameras would get up and leave and go and get a snack or whatever and then come back. So it was much different from being in the classroom where you can put your hands right on them and kind of pull them back into the learning situation. It was just kind of hard for the kids, the virtual learning for the little kids. Mm-hmm.
So after the teachers were telling you about how difficult it was, you just made up a story about this little girl?
I kind of made up a story about a little girl, yes. Mm-hmm.
So what happens?
She does not like virtual learning. She did not like her parents teaching, because with the virtual learning, a lot of the times the parents would have to work with them a lot more than what they would have to work with them if they were in the classroom.
Okay.
Parents was left to do the homework with them. And this little girl had she didn't like the mask. She didn't like the wearing the mask. And the COVID-19 forcing the parents to stay home from work and the children to do homeschooling through virtual learning. During the pandemic, many of the children this pandemic had made many children and many adults very sick, causing many deaths throughout the country too. And this little girl was very, very upset because she couldn't go to school to learn with her teachers and her friends. She tells how she was talking about how she disliked wearing the mask, how she disliked the virtual learning, and she really disliked the way her mom teaches. Now, when I was teaching, a lot of the times the little kids, the parents would say that they couldn't hold the capture and hold the interest of the kids as well as the teachers could.
Well, that makes sense, doesn't it?
Yeah, because the kids, I know I have a nephew that lived with me, and when he was little, I would have to get on him on his homework, and a lot of the times I would have to sit right next to him to get it done. Because if I I would explain it to him, the directions and everything, and let him get kind of busy. But he was kind of a quick learner. But in my classroom, I had children that wasn't a quick learner that I would have to spend more time with and sit right next to them and go work right with them one-on-one a lot.
Right. What happens in the book? She's very unhappy. She hates wearing the mask. She doesn't like her parents teaching her. She doesn't like virtual learning. What happens in the book?
So in the story, they finally get school opens up again, and she's very happy to be with her teachers and her classmates now.
Okay.
So they're learning how to wear their mask in school, how to do the 6 feet standing away from each other. They were learning how to, she was really happy to be back in school with her friends and her teachers. She's happy that she's with her classmates and her friends again. And they're learning how to, seeing the other children with their mask on, I guess it wasn't having to wear the mask out whenever they go out, seeing the other children with the mask on. The kids kind of start really getting used to the mask, wearing the mask. It became a part of their, like your glasses. It's something that you really need, that you had to wear. The teachers are wearing them. Your classmates are wearing them. So she got used to wearing the mask and was really happy being back at school with her friends. On the bus, they had their mask on. They had already learned, because we all had the 6 feet apart, staying 6 feet apart, washing their hands, talking with her parents, and the parents encouraging them to just to hang in there. Everything is going to be all right. Soon, very soon, this COVID thing will be over and things will be back to normal. And I think a lot of the grown-ups, we just didn't know how much it was affecting the kids. We thought it was only affecting us because we was kind of going about our day. I know with my job that I have now since I stopped teaching, I was never off. I still worked every day.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
There were a lot of people who continued to work through the pandemic. And let me just say, I hope that if something like this ever happens again, I hope we can come up with a better plan than remote learning.
Definitely, because I know that a lot of the children lost a lot when it comes to their reading and their math.
Yeah. Are they reading your book in the school you used to teach in?
I have a list of people that I am going to sell books to, and I know some people from Michigan that's in the school systems. I was going to see if they would be interested in purchasing the books.
What, reading them to the kids?
In the classroom, reading them in the classroom, yes.
Would you actually go into the classroom and read?
Yes.
Good. Are you going to keep writing?
Yes, I plan to. I started on a book about vaccines.
Oh, boy.
And that they are good for everybody, that they're not just for children, that they help keep us healthy. And I kind of put it to the side because I was trying to get this book up and off the ground.
All right. Sounds like a plan. Janette A. Smith, COVID-19 and me. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much.
We hope you enjoyed this edition of the ReaderHouse Author Roundtable, where authors from all walks of life come together to discuss the trials, tribulations, and triumphs of publishing their books. I'm Alice Stockton Rossini. We hope to see you back here every Saturday night at 8 o'clock, or listen to our podcast anytime on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, TuneIn, and PodServe, just to name a few. The Author Roundtable is sponsored by ReaderHouse Online Bookstore, where independent new authors come first.